All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the fourth session of our series, Let's Talk Mental Health. Before we jump into the session and before I introduce everybody today, we're going to start off with the land acknowledgement. So Uplift Black acknowledges that we are situated on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. The Anishinaabe include the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. We would also like to thank JD Engineering for sponsoring this series. So as with all of our previous sessions, we are so lucky to have Debbie hosting today's session again, as she is an influential mother of four and a registered psychotherapist who works to erase the stigma associated with mental health and give people the tools they need to share their story. Debbie has extensive experience in mental health advocacy as a workshop facilitator, clinical consultant, and television host. Her work takes an anti-oppressive approach, is focused on healing, and is informed by a trauma and anti-Black racism lens. Tonight, we're also super excited to have Ravyn Wngz, the Black Widow Burlesque. She's a Tanzanian, Bermudian, Mohawk, two-spirit, queer, and transcendent empowerment storyteller. Ravyn is an abolitionist and Black Renaissance artist. Her work is rooted in Black liberation and Indigenous resurgence. She is a co-founder of Ilnana Diversity Dance Company and a co-founder of Black Lives Matter Canada, a Canadian best-selling author, top 25 Women on Influence in Canada recipient of 2021, and on the steering team of Black Lives Matter Toronto chapter, a group that's committed to eradicating all forms of anti-Black racism, supporting Black healing, and liberating Black communities. Tonight, Debbie and Ravyn will be talking about what activism looks like. And if you have any questions at all during the session, just put them right into the comment section of this live stream and we can get to them. And I'm going to hand it over to Debbie now.
Thanks so much, Rachel. That's a great introduction, Ravyn. You are multifaceted. You've got a lot in there in that intro. So I am thrilled. I'm excited to actually be talking to you today. Listen, not only can you wear a head wrap like nobody's business, and your earrings are always on point, you have this skill of just being able to be vulnerable. But it's always a teaching moment with you. And I love reading your posts. I love seeing what you do. So I am so happy that you're here tonight. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's always really special for me when I get to share about myself and my practice and art and activism. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation, especially with you too and all the work that you do.
Yes. Well, let's start off with your journey. And I'm particularly interested in this because, you know, we talk about the communities, LGBTQ, and as associated with mental health, but I'm wondering about your journey and if you would please tell us about your journey and where you were from and where you are at right now.
Sure. So I was born in Bermuda, raised by my mother. And I'm a twin.
I didn't know that. Okay.
I have a twin brother who is fantastic. We're vastly different, but there's some unique bits that were the same. I would say that he is a charismatic performer, and I've had to really lean into that for myself because I'm shy and I'm sort of reclusive as well.
You wouldn't know that, Ravyn.
Yeah. A lot of performers are shy. It's easier to perform on stage because you get to like create an environment that allows yourself to exist in a way that you're not always able to. And that largely describes my journey. I'm a dancer first. I love dance. It is my love language. It's how I take in the world. When I watch something or read the news or interact with people in public, it goes into my body first, and then it comes to my mind. And so in essence, so I use that to reflect what's happening in my life and around me, and to help shine a light on the areas that we're not paying attention to in our own lives and in the lives of other people. And so I was born in Bermuda, but I also lived in Atlanta, Georgia, I love Atlanta, the South. The I was lucky to be able to go to high school in Atlanta, Georgia, and experience such a pride of Blackness that I hadn't experienced before. You know, Bermuda is 60% Black. And so I didn't have the experience that many people have where they grew up in predominantly white schools, with billboards. All the reflections around me were like me for the most part. But when you grow up in Georgia, you were either raised to be like Martin Luther King or Coretta Scott King. Those are the two sort of architectures that you sort of grow into. And I didn't really fit into that way of being and expressing myself. And so at a young age, I was bullied a lot. And for my voice, the sound of my voice, just the energy that I had.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I really I'm not quiet. I'm more reserved. And so I stopped speaking in a lot of areas because it was dangerous for me most of the time. Growing up and bullied and chased and all kinds of things. And so I started singing at the age of 14 years old because it was just like an outlet. Me and my brother used to just be singing Toni Braxton and having a good time.
Right.
We discovered that I had a little talent for it. And so I was like, I'm going to sing. My mom took me to a Broadway show. And it changed my life watching Heather Headley, who was from Trinidad.
Yes.
The Lion King, as well as Rita. The dancers and the costumes and the staging. I was like, this is what I need to do. At that time, I was training to be in the Olympics.
To do what?
Track and field.
Oh, wow. Great.
I was a top athlete in my school, and so that's what I thought I was going to be doing.
My
track
goodness,
and field and swimming. And so everyone was really shocked when I moved into performance. And so anyway, I moved to Toronto in 2004 to go to Ballet Creole, and I stayed and went to Toronto Dance Theatre. After which I started a dance company called Il Nana Diversity Dance Company with my partner 14 years and my best friend. And it started off for fun. We just wanted to explore and see ourselves in ways that we weren't allowed to in the dance, mainstream dance community space and stages. And so what started off as like this outlet became this real vehicle for like change and self-expression. And we started getting all these gigs, and people really started attaching to our work. And so we started getting asked to teach. And through that teaching, started advocacy, disability justice, accessibility, those kinds of programs, and really working to decolonize the ways that we were teaching technique and professional dance, and sort of creating platforms for queer and trans non-binary people to perform and tell their own stories on stage, and giving them the tools to do so. And so it was through that I connected with Black Lives Matter. That's the reason for the circular story. It was through that dance connection, because they asked me to choreograph a flash mob. That flash mob was a Take Back the Night collaboration with Black Lives Matter Toronto chapter. And Take Back the Night, for those who don't know, is a rally for survivors of sexual assault and gender-based violence. And so we performed a flash mob, and it was the first time that I'd seen seen dance for me used in a different way. I was always told that I was either allowed to be Black or queer. I couldn't be both. And so I chose myself, which meant that I did less Black specific work. and just focused on doing advocacy and being sort of a possibility model, like on my own.
Right.
Um,
Did you get pushback from that?
oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. When I first started and people were like, why is your hair like that? And why you have to wear that? And you're too much and all of that. The Black dance community wasn't really welcoming of me. And they weren't really welcoming of me at all. And so Ilnana became what I poured myself into.
Okay.
And through that, I made all these beautiful connections and was asked to join Black Lives Matter after I showed up to a protest and saw the police attack the protesters that night. And it was such a shocking experience for me. And I'm a person who grew up in the South.
Right, yeah.
You know, but I had never seen it in front of me. I heard about it. We always knew that it was possible. Our principal, over the intercom in the mornings or in the afternoons when we're leaving, would say, "Hey, hey students, we want you to make sure that you tell your parents not to drive through these particular areas. There has been Ku Klux Klan activity in these areas," and that was 14, right? And
that was what you grew up with. That was what you
knew.
knew. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but I didn't expect it to be here in Canada because I wasn't paying attention to it. It was here, obviously, it's here.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm an immigrant, I'm a student, I have a thing to do and things to focus on, and I'm trans and I can't get out there and be in front and all that stuff. And so initially I showed up to those protests to just offer some harm reduction through way of movement, because I saw the impacts on people's bodies. Like I read a lot of, I read body postures and things like that, because it's what I do.
Yeah.
And watching the trauma that folks were sitting with, I was like, okay, let's move, let's stretch, let's dance. And every morning I'd show up and stretch with folks, dance with those singing circles, those kinds of things, at the occupation of the Toronto Police Headquarters. And I wasn't planning on being a part of the actual team. I just wanted to be helpful. I saw this this way in through what my passion to help the movement. And so they asked me to join, and the rest is quite wild and powerful.
Wow. When you show up and the traditional way of protesting is happening, and you show up with a different view of protesting, how do people respond to that? Do they kind of take it or leave it?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, I mean, I joined the team in 2016 for context. And so the conversations were so different back then. Like, to prove that anti-Black racism exists. It wasn't in any of the language. It wasn't documented. There was no race-based data collected. And we saw that happen again with COVID-19, where we were collecting race-based data for real reasons, right? And so the first couple of years, we were really just trying to do political education for our communities to let people know what their rights were, and to shine a light on all the families who've been affected by police violence, and to create some strategies for ways to keep each other safe. Because we're abolitionists, and abolition is about safety. It's about freedom and joy. And now we're seeing, after the uprisings of 2020, which I should say are the only reason that uprisings could happen in 2020 is because of the hundreds of years of protesting and protecting of Indigenous folks and Black folks who moved our movement forward.
Okay, because I was going to ask you, why is that? But this is, exactly.
Because for me, Black Lives Matter isn't new. Conversation. These aren't new ideas. A lot of them are ideas that we've learned from the Black Panthers and civil rights movements, our elders and forebearers. And so reminders,
Yeah,
questions. We are freer where we aren't all free.
exactly.
How do we bring attention to MAD communities, MADD communities,
Yes.
disabled communities, and not just turn to MAD communities in this time period, because COVID-19 has had everyone creating social bubbles, right?
Mm.
Social bubbles and safety circles and things. These come from disability justice movements, right? Like
Ooh,
practices. That's where it comes from.
okay.
Creating interdependence and networking with each other to keep each other safe, right? And so how many times were you feeling sick or like, I can't come into work today, or we saw what happened with George Floyd and I got to go to work with all these people and I'm not able to function. I can still do work, but from home.
Right.
And how many times did they say, oh, that's not possible, we can't make that happen? And in this time period, they found a way. You know what I mean?
That's right. Yep. Yeah, that's right.
And so it's not a surprise that many of the victims of police violence who end in death are folks who are mad and disabled, who are acting uncharacteristically in public.
Right.
So making sure that we are centering disability justice, make sure we're centering trans leadership and mad leadership.
Yes.
And so that we are actually changing these systems for everyone. Yeah.
Would you say we've got a long way to go, though?
I think that we're moving in pieces.
Yeah.
There are things that I'm like, we are talking about abolition. I don't know how many conversations I've had about abolition this year alone.
Right.
Whereas before you couldn't say it on TV.
Yes.
Years ago, abolitionists had to be working in secret. And so now there are talks about abolition and they don't seem so radical.
Right.
And so that's progress. That's change. That's these movements, irresistible. Octavia Butler says all activism is speculative fiction. Dare to imagine ourselves in a better place. We from what we have inherited. And so that's what I believe activism is, and that's why I do it through art as well. So direct activism, helping and supporting families, and what I do specifically on the team, because we all have different strengths. I'm not a strategist.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about protests, I think of them as a showcase.
Okay.
I'm thinking about, what are we going to wear? What are the colors? What are the chants going to be like? How are we going to get people's attention? How do I use these principles of burlesque? People into this conversation and so allow them to feel included and protected when they join us. And so it's a choreography, so to speak, these protests. And so utilizing my dance skills for the movement in that way has helped me with not burning out.
Yes.
It's inspiring me and healing me at the same time, and for my community at the same time. Art is such a powerful tool, and as a two-spirit person, Indigenous two-spirit person, my job is to be a memory keeper.
Okay. Yeah.
Stories with my body and to share them. And so in our African traditions and Indigenous traditions, I'm just continuing that legacy of storytelling through dance and movement.
Right. And so I want to get into the protesting and being able to dance and express it in different ways. I just want to go back to George Floyd, if we can. So what did you think about the protest when it came to George Floyd? What was your opinion about how the protests were done? Do you think that we accomplished what we needed to? in your opinion, right? I mean, people have their opinions, but I wonder.
Here's the thing. I think we organized really well.
Okay.
Organized really, really well. And we got people having a conversation that they weren't having before about white supremacy and about the monuments to white supremacy that we uphold. Statue of Egerton Ryerson, the statue of John A. McDonald, for example. We saw the statues to white supremacy coming down. And the metaphors that we purposefully use to talk about a history that is invisibilized, erased. Recently we found out that there are 215 remains of Indigenous children found in a residential school.
Yeah.
For me, that's not surprising. Because I listen, I know the story, you know what I mean? We know the story. It's not information that we all didn't know.
So why are people surprised by it?
I think people are surprised because we want to believe that we are in a safer place.
Okay.
Because we have images and representations getting what we want. If we just work hard enough, we will get there. We will have the thing.
Yeah.
But we all know we've all had mothers and family members who work 3 jobs and are not Jeff Bezos. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Right.
It's what's the value placed on the work that you do. That's things. But with George Floyd, I think about his family. I think I went on a tangent before, but that's what I do on BLMTO. I speak to the families, and I sit with them, and I ask them how can we support them and what do they need, and then we design that's based on their asks. We don't do a protest just because someone has passed away. We have to get permission from the family so that we're not re-traumatizing.
That's a great point.
And the Black Lives Matter Canada network do, just to make sure that families are prepared for what they're going to come up against. Safety-wise, all those things need to be considered. And so I think about his family. I think about his daughter and how there's a video that went around. We all saw it about her dad changing the world, and I broke tears and I had hives and because for me, I was like, when she is 15 years old, that video is going to be played every single year at the same time. And the amount of pain, the amount of loss, and the amount of resentment that will grow in her because of loss is, that's what I think about. And then the movement that surged around it, there are things that are positive and there are things that are frustrating for me. Sonia Renee Taylor, who is the author of The Body Is Not an Apology.
It's a good book.
Yeah, it's amazing. She talks about like having a Black love ethic that doesn't wait for us to die to care about us. And so we have been screaming for our lifetimes. Lifetimes, generations, about the safety, about the dangers, about the state of emergency that our Black families find ourselves in due to the state-sanctioned violence, the redlining, the no loans to Black women, like all that kind of stuff feeds into the kind of lives that we can have and not have. And so for me, conversations around allyship started happening in a way that was more less in theory and more in practice, and so that's a positive thing. But then whenever there's a popular movement, you will find that institutions start changing their language. They start adopting the language of the movement, adopting the language of the ground to sound progressive, to not feel like they are in the past, to deal with past guilt. But it doesn't mean that their practices has changed. Doesn't mean that their hiring practices have changed. Doesn't mean Black people are safe in those spaces. It doesn't mean that the Black woman who spoke up about being looked looked over, was
Right.
hurt last year or 2 years ago, you know, all that.
So they're just acknowledging it.
Yeah, but it's kind of like a pride sticker. You know, we're in Pride Month.
Okay.
Kind of
Yeah.
like taking a rainbow flag and posting it on your window and thinking that that is the end of the job.
Right.
Empathy is not action.
Mm.
You know, so many people are focused on what's going to bring us empathy. I've had so many conversations about that. And it's like, no, it's not empathy. Empathy is easy. That's human.
Yeah.
Like it's easier to cry than to do something about it.
Right.
You have
Right.
to do something about it.
Right. Right.
You know,
So is that what a lot of people were doing? They
Yeah, I found that people were having those conversations and with their family members for the first time, with their this uncle, and I think that was really positive. And we saw a shift.
Yes.
In a conversation. We saw a shift in people paying attention to the injustice against Asian and Pacific.
Yes.
But these are things that, like I said before, these are old, you know, from internment camps to the cultures, like the ways that people of color have been stereotyped and attacked throughout history are not new. And so I find myself sort of reminding people of what they already knew, like what they've chosen to forget or omit. Or it's just a harsh reality, because they are harsh realities. I'm not saying it's easy work, but I think it's necessary, you know, because I think activism, people don't think of it like a relationship. Activism is a relationship with the people who you are in solidarity with, are in movement with, or even just for yourself in the Black communities. And so it's about building trust with each other. It's about building new language with each other and finding ways to allow ourselves to be our full selves in all the spaces that we show up in, and to be supported by each other with that.
Okay.
And so I've seen more of that happening. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So a lot of good came out of these protests. A lot of good. And then there's some work. There's still some work.
There's always work.
Yeah. Great. So let's talk a little bit about being an activist and the way that you show your activism. So you talked about dance, you talked about art. How do you merge those into being an activist? I love the way you do this. So I'm wondering if you can paint us a picture.
They're absolutely connected. I don't see them as separate. My art is my activism. It is okay, how do I break it down? The way that I describe myself as an activist is I'm an activist because of the intersections of my life.
Okay.
And if I wasn't an activist, I wouldn't be alive. I'm 36 right now. And as a trans person, I'm an elder. That's a reality. As a Black trans woman, I am of the older of Black trans women because
when do you become an elder? At what age? Because
it's I mean, they're different things. An elder in terms of not an elder in terms of like I do the work of an elder. I don't do that yet.
Right.
But what I mean is being 36, it means that I've survived past the mortality rate, 29.
Right.
And so here in Canada, the mortality rate of Black trans women is 29 years old.
What is it in the States?
It's 27. It's lower. It's younger.
Okay.
Wow. But they're pretty close in number.
Yeah. Still too young.
Yeah, still way too young. And so the reality is that I use art to survive. I use dance to escape the island that I was on, because I knew that I wasn't gonna get a singing scholarship. So what I could do is get a dance scholarship. That's really when I started dancing. because I wanted to leave my island of Bermuda and start my own life and just exist, in a way that I didn't feel like I could. And so dance is a metaphor for the way that I navigate through the world. And so as a burlesque artist, I really became a burlesque artist because I wanted to have a better relationship to my body. As trans people, even as women, because of a lot of the experiences that we have the skill of leaving our bodies, of disassociating.
Yeah.
And so I, as a dancer, I had to find something else because movement was easy for me, but I had to find something else to heal. And there came a point where doing ballet and hip hop and all those kinds of things weren't healing. And so I needed to invest in an art form that was old and was about storytelling and was about blending all the parts of me together, and using glamour and boas and all these kinds of things. And for me, it's consent culture. And so it was really, for me, dealing with a lot of my own like sexual violence that I've experienced and really healing a lot of that for me. So my art is really selfish, actually.
Okay.
That I do it for me first.
Right.
And anyone who knows me, if you hire me for a show, a performance or something, and you're like, oh, I want something happy, just know that it's not going to look like that.
It's about how you feel. That's how you're gonna.
I'm going to do joy, but I'm going to show you everything that it takes to get to joy, as from my perspective as a trans woman. And so it's not just like this easy jump. It's a leap of faith sometimes to have joy and to exist in happiness and to thrive. As I feel like I am at this moment.
Is that unique to you, or do artists really take that selfish approach? I don't want to call it selfish, but it's that.
I would say it's self-centered because I have I'm imbalanced. I had an imbalance of I'm an older sibling. And so folks who are in the older sibling of the siblings know that you react first.
Yes.
You protect them.
I'm an older sibling. Yeah. I'm an older. Yeah.
You wait for your emotions and you wait for your turn. And Black folks are always told, wait until the world is safer. Queer folks are wait until people accept you getting married. It's always sort of wait.
Yeah.
And so for me, art was my way of being like, no, this is for me. I'm gonna do this. And then I was like, oh, people are seeing themselves reflected in what I do. And so I'm gonna keep doing it. And then what I can do is share how I do it. And so that's why I developed the Right to Dance program and those kinds of projects, so that other folks have the tools to do the same thing. So they didn't have to do it just like me, but they had tools to be able to tell their own specific stories. And so it's unique in that I listen to Jackie Shane and Nina Simone and James Baldwin, and Nina Simone says no fear, and James Baldwin says the artists have to tell the truth, and reflect the times, but also need to be the hammer.
Right.
That's what I'm going to do with my art. And so my art is really, really intentional. Everything that I put out, from every post that I do, is really intentional with what my reasons are and the conversations that I want to put out there.
So would this be a form of self-care for you? Because as a therapist, I think about, doing the self-care piece, doing the coping mechanism piece. Was that what dance is for you?
Yeah, it started off as a hobby. I was doing track and field. And so I was like, my mom was like, I think you're talented at this. And I was like, okay, I'll try it, and then I was like, oh my goodness, I don't have to talk here.
Yeah.
I can dance my feelings out. And so no one has to know exactly what I'm thinking.
Right. Right.
Just do it. And so that's what dance offered me. And so there are some conversations that I don't have publicly, and then there are some things that can only be sung, and then there's some things that can only be written. And that's how I think about art practices, and I think of them as communication
Yeah.
ways.
You don't have to speak. You could just show and people will know.
Yeah, it's self-care. When dance didn't work for me, then I turned to singing. And then when singing wasn't working, now I've turned to writing. And so it shifted all over the place.
What do you mean it wasn't working? What do you mean by that?
When you turn your hobby into your profession and your job and your career and then your livelihood, it changes your relationship to it. And because I was in institutional dance, there were a group of people who got to decide whether I was good enough.
Oh.
And so dance changed for me about like what it was for and what I was doing, which is why burlesque was such a detour from what I was doing, and allowed me the freedom to just have fun and I actually became a much better artist through burlesque. Because when reading up about it, I was like, oh my goodness, it started in the 1600s. It started as a written art form. It's one of the only arts industries that's dominated by women. Right. The only one.
Right.
And so that's why consent is constantly talked about through it. It doesn't mean that there aren't things that happen in the burlesque world, because there are problems. But in terms of the expressions of gender, of body, of sex, and for me, it wasn't what I took off; it was what I put on. Oh. You know, for some people, it's what they put on.
Yeah.
That danger, or joy, or celebration, or both. All of them.
Right.
You know, and sit here in this Zoom room and dress all the ways that I feel special and me, and then walk out into the street and then be bullied and then be like, oh man, like it's this really it's really hard reality. And so that's why I've created so many stories on stage, as I said before, so I can exist free in a way.
When people say that you're too much, is that, what do they mean by too much? Is it like you just expressing too much? You're just too much energy?
I think well, in dance they told me that I was too much because I have what they would call a desirable body for dance. If only I just didn't do ... You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, you would get more work if you just. And I was like, but then who's on stage?
Right.
Not me.
Right. Yeah.
That's what the dance industry is. You are a vessel for somebody else's idea of the world, of themselves, somebody else's creation, somebody else's fantasy.
Yeah.
You know, there are problems. And I just didn't want to be that anymore. So crafting that for myself was the way that I liberated myself out of thinking that dance was just that I needed it validated by these institutions. And so that's really shifted for me.
Okay.
Much is also about anti-Blackness. You know, I saw a post recently that from a Black woman who was like, why is it that when Black women are confident and boastful and even vain, that someone always has to like tell them to bring it down a notch?
Right. Yeah.
It's just too much, sis. Like, you know, too much confidence. And I'm
You're
like, well,
doing too much.
Yeah. And what people I don't think fully understand, at least in my case, is that I am as insecure as I am confident. right? And so for me, it's like I project confidence so I can lean into it.
Okay.
When I first started creating stories on stage, I didn't feel powerful. I wanted to create images that looked powerful. And so I could embody that on stage.
Oh, wow.
And then once I saw myself that way, I could live it. And so that is how I did it. Even with my Instagram, it started off, if anyone follows my Instagram, you notice at the very beginning of my Instagram, it's just my face.
Right.
That was really because I was bullied so much in public, on subways, everywhere, that I was like, what are people seeing? I don't even know what I look like. Like I think I look a certain way, and then when I walk out into the world, people are terrified or they have these huge reactions, whether I'm done up or not. And so I started taking photos of myself, and if you notice, like I'm not smiling in a lot of them. Be on my way to something or way back to something, because I wanted to make myself familiar. There aren't any images of trans women that look like me.
Okay.
Other than that of like Jackie Shane. But trans women who don't have a gender destination. I put it that way. And so, because I don't have a gender destination, I just am how I am and I exist from like all kinds of wigs and all kinds of things. I confuse a lot of people. But I think that's where my magic is. My magic is offering a different possibility of how someone can exist. And so when my speech went viral last year on that stage of talking about abolition, and there were two conversations that came out of that.
Okay.
And there was one conversation that was like, oh my goodness, this is what we've been saying. This was so eloquent, la 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 la. This was so great. Thank you, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And there's this other conversation. Is this what our leaders look like now?
Oh, wow.
Right. And so for me, I had to deal with both all the time. But what it offers me is an ability to have conversations in a way that I think are unique, because I'm being celebrated, really, really celebrated, and then really, really not. Finding that middle place of like, how do I talk to that person who doesn't want to see me in front?
Right.
Whether or not we get along or not, whether or not I like you or not, I'm still fighting for your freedom.
Right.
So I still need to be able to have a conversation with you. So how do I do that in a way that is that holds you accountable, in a way that you could be harming me, but also hold space and grace for the difference of opinions, allowing us to all exist. So that's what I believe abolition is. Like, you know what I mean? It isn't all of us having one thought, one mind, all that. I think we all decide our own liberation, our own agency, which is why when we talk about activism, there's so many ways to do it. You know, Octavia, writing science fiction, she created a book 20 years before Donald Trump went into the office, talking about there will be a white American man who becomes president using the slogan "Make America Great Again." Like, she saw it beforehand.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so then there's Harriet Tubman there, who's a mad Black woman, you know, and who they didn't consider to be able to do what she did, largely because of the way that we treat people who are mad and disabled. And so not seeing those as desirable states.
Right.
You know, that's important for our work too. And so looking at the vastness, like we need Beyonce, we need Nina Simone, like we need Nicki Minaj, we need Lauryn Hill, like we need all of the different ways that we can exist and express ourselves. And just like activism, you don't have to be in the street to be the activism.
Right.
It's not just largely ableist in thought, right? Not everyone can show up to the march. And so how do you make it possible for everyone to engage? And so people create banners, people write and sing and dance. or create television shows like Ava DuVernay, and you know what I mean. There are different ways to move us forward and have these conversations. Some of us enter into these old archaic institutions to change them from the inside. Some of us will not do that at all, and we need both. And so being able to support an Oprah and able to support an Amanda Paris, like these are really that we have vastness of experiences, vastness of conversations, so that the boat rises together.
That it's an interesting concept, though. You don't need to be in a protest, marching to protest. That's fascinating, because I don't know if people understand that, because there has always been
people are feel shamed or guilted into show up, and it's like show up. When I say show up, I mean show up in all the ways that are possible for you to do that from where you sit. And my job as a person who organizes these things is to create a space expecting everyone to show up, so that there's ASL, Black ASL, and then that doesn't really cover all the people because not everybody speaks English. But you know, that we make sure that we have medics there, that we make sure we have, you know, all the things are really important for our movements. It's just what we center with Black Lives Matter Toronto, specifically making sure that all of our actions are accessible. So we have buses and we have emergency things, and you know, we have security teams, safety teams, to make sure that everyone's taken care of. So if you do want to show up, there is space for you to be able to do that, and be heard and have your voice added to the conversation. I think it's important.
That's great. That's amazing. I want to just get back to the confusion part. When people are confused about who you are and what you do, is that what leads to the bullying?
It's old. Okay. The reason why I say it's old is like, I know that as a Black trans woman, especially the way that I identify and show up in the world, that I am the furthest thing away from a white man. And because it is what is most desired in a capitalistic structure, is to be a white Christian man, I am not close to that. And so I interrupt. And because of the way that white supremacy and white supremacists have designed our Blackness, and we have changed what it means to be Black, but you know, they needed us to be Black so that they could be white, if that makes sense. And so people need me to be their sort of whetstone, for example. Like that, like I feel like people just are terrified of because I am, like, even me, I was terrified of me because I am what my parents never wanted me to become. Like, I'm what people are like, oh, you don't want your child is dancing, you don't really want them to be out in a dress and like all of that. Like, I became the thing, and the person that I wasn't supposed to be. And because a lot of media, this is why I do media specifically, a lot of media growing up was like Ricky Lake. And so trans folks on those shows looked a really specific way. Trans folks a really specific way. From Hitchcock films, they were always the murderers, who were, you know, there was just a way. We have been seen throughout time as dangerous. And so because of that, when people see me, they think danger right away because of their association. It had nothing to do with me, actually, but I hit off all these bells because of how I exist. And so I understand that it's larger than me. Yeah.
But it affects you.
Oh, deeply. Deeply.
Yeah.
You know, it's really, really hard for me. on a regular basis. But I will say this, I have, I usually say this about my ancestors and elders, like they didn't have the opportunity to rest. That wasn't something that I wanted to do. And so in this time period, I can rest. There are so many trans and two-spirit people who weren't safe enough to be visible in the ways that I am. And so as much as I receive, it is also my job and my duty to show up this way. You know, the way Jackie Shane showed up. And when I saw her, I was like, yes,
right.
Exist. Laverne Cox. That's actually what did it for me. I was confused about my identity for a long time. And I saw her on stage and she said, "Hello, everyone. I'm Laverne Cox and I am an African American trans woman." And my whole body like lit on fire because I was like, wait a minute, I'm sitting in like a theater with 400 people listening to a Black trans woman's story and she's valuable.
Yes.
I was like,
and she's amazing.
I don't have to exist fighting every urge to be myself. I can exist more as me. And in doing so, I'm more exposed, I am more visible, it's more dangerous for me. You know, when that video went viral and 3 million people were sharing it, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm not safe.
What do you mean by that? Because when you say you can rest, but you're still not safe.
Yeah, I'm not safe, but I do have moments of joy. I do have, you know, loving relationships. I do, Ravyn, someone just asked in the chat there, Ravyn is a name that I chose, and that chose me in a time period where I just didn't feel like I could exist.
Okay.
And so I was just too nice, too shy, too afraid. And I was like, I need something to drive me. And what is that going to be? And so I meditated, I sat with my elders, and the name Ravyn came to me in a meditation. And Ravyn is the voice. She is the mother. She is how I drive. And when I think of my mother, no matter if she was afraid or whatever, she was a champion. And so it was like, I'm going to be a champion for myself. And so in doing so, I'm hired as Ravyn. You know what I mean? Like that is something that a lot of my elders never got a chance to do. You know, we were only allowed to exist in ballrooms. Now we see it on television, but that's real. We had to create for ourselves. You know, we had to create these possibilities for ourselves, and I get to live it. And so, as hard as it is, I'm here because of the work of, you know, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera and Cyrus Marcus Ware and all these folks who have been shaping the conversation and the safety around me being able to exist. And so, you know, and then I did it, and I didn't realize that I would. You never think that you will. And so my video goes around and I get messages from mothers from Norway who's my child friends, and it's been really hard for us. And seeing you allowed us to have a really different conversation, you know, like being able to offer that to other people. I'm like, that's why. And so I can receive the whatever I receive if it means that more trans kids are able to live as themselves in the way that they choose to.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to ask you, how does it feel though, that you now these people paved the way for you, but you are paving the way for
it's
how many
it's
people?
Work, you know, the Black Panthers have a saying, each one teach one. And so what I learn, I share. It doesn't belong to me. Not even my activism belongs to me.
Right.
You know, long before me, the language that I'm using, the intersectional language, comes from Kimberly Crenshaw, you know, and so it's so when I say I listen to Black women.
Yeah. Yes.
No, it's I listen to and all Black women, and I listen to disabled communities, and I listen to crap television, and I listen to all kinds of media too, because I'm like, what is the conversation that's in my circle of people, and what's happening outside it? Because we can, because I think that's what happens with George Floyd, we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
People were just in their own bubbles.
Yes.
They were in their own experience. And then I was like, wait a minute, what?
There's more to this world? Yeah.
And for all of us who had been shouldering it,
Yeah.
we're like, so you didn't see that last year? This wasn't like a thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think that there is a convenience to this time period, but I will accept that if it means that more people add their names to the list. I think that so many of us grow up not feeling like we can be game changers or shift social norms or things like that. But when I think about Oprah,
right,
I think about this dark skinned Black kid, you know
woman
what I
from
mean?
the South,
Poor Black kid,
yes,
who is Oprah,
right?
Like,
yes, yes.
Shut down industries, you know,
Yes.
like I'm like, man,
Yeah.
we are miraculous, you know.
Yes.
And I know that that's sort of a capitalist way of thinking about it, but there's all these other ways of connecting and understanding. And so my elders and ancestors are so important to me. And I'm right now I'm working on radical reciprocity. And so how do I'm receiving this information from, you know, Sonia Renee Taylor and Amanda Seales and you know, all the work that exists in the world, share it. Yes. What do I offer back to these people who are layering this information, who are living these experiences and then turning them into lessons for all of us to not actually have to go through much.
Right. Yeah.
School, you know?
Yeah.
And so there's a privilege. That's what I meant by there's a privilege in this lifetime that we get to rest in the way that my ancestors didn't. And so my job is to think of myself as an ancestor.
Okay.
And my progeny, like who comes after me, whether I have children or not, who comes after me in the movement, like what am I leaving for them? You know? And if we think of bloodlines and we think of intergenerational trauma, what can I do in this lifetime? What can I undo?
Right.
Myself so that they're not carrying my stuff in their lifetime, you know? Because you know, we do as much as we can, but I feel like that's also my work. So my self-care of dance, of expression, of joy, of watching dynasty cat fights, all of that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Is releasing the work as well. We need joy as well.
Is that the ultimate goal for you about the work that you do? At the end of your life, which is going to be many years from now, is that the goal that you're looking towards and saying,
yes,
that's what I wanted.
I believe it's possible. You know, I'm a dreamer.
Yeah.
You know, I was really discouraged from being a dreamer as a kid. You know, there's a certain age where you're like, okay, you daydream. And then there's a certain age where you're like, okay, stop that daydreaming.
This is real life. Yeah.
I dream this future for myself. You know, at 5 years old, when I was playing with my toys and naming them me on a stage in front of an audience of people, all of that was my dream work. That was me casting my spells and imagining myself in all these grand ways. And when I said add your name to the list, what I meant was I didn't think that I could be a leader because I didn't sound like one. I didn't look like one.
Right.
Not the ones that are celebrated.
Ah.
So,
okay.
You know, Janelle Monáe says, I'm here to celebrate the uncelebrated. And so I'm looking at the uncelebrated activists,
Right.
the people who were there the whole time,
Yes.
sex workers, the indigenous folks, the Black folks, the
Yes.
suffrage, like everyone who was here doing the work, who doesn't get the credit, whose names aren't on monuments and all those kinds of things,
Right.
who actively changed what was possible for me.
Right.
Viola Davis mentions, I want my acting to be a lighthouse, shine a light on all these characters that are never seen.
And she does that well. Yeah.
I'm gonna be a lighthouse.
Yes, exactly. When you say that you didn't think that you could be a leader, and then you have this, your speech going viral. Did you dream that? Because if you stopped dreaming, you wouldn't be where you are right now. Did you dream that?
Yeah, I didn't think it would be this way. I thought that I would get famous as a dancer. I thought I'd be dancing next to Janet Jackson or something.
Still possible. Still possible.
I'm like, if I make it next to Janet Jackson, I quit, everyone. That's it.
And the black. That's great. Yes.
And so when that speech, I've never watched it. I watched it once, maybe 3 weeks ago, and only partially. Because when I hear, I've heard it a bunch of times. When I hear it, all I can hear is my heart breaking, because what I was dealing with at that time was knowing that folks who were at our protest were arrested. And the very real reality of what that meant for their lives.
Right.
Responsible, and I felt I was angry, and I was sad, and I felt unprepared, and I felt like outmaneuvered, in all honesty, by the police, and I wanted to offer something, and so that press conference was about information. We wanted to let people know who these people were. Egerton Ryerson, John A. McDonald. And now, a year later, we are seeing exactly what we were talking about.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Right? And we were criticizing us, but I was like, this is because we know these stories. And we're like, how come there's a university, a place of learning, with this man's name on it?
I mean, it's been there.
I'm confused. What are we celebrating?
Yeah.
And know that those architects of the residential school system, that same project was taken to South Africa and created apartheid. And so we are connected through these people's vile behavior.
Yes.
And so I wasn't supposed to speak. I had already done my speech. No one has seen that part of it. But I was kind of shaking, and I was like, why don't they get it? Like, why don't they understand? And I was talking about the media, the people who were right in front of me. I didn't think that it was going to go viral. Our press conferences never do. And so I was like, I need them to know.
But what didn't you see? What didn't you see that you thought they don't know?
Their questions. I was like, why do they keep asking us the same questions over and over? Like, what don't they understand? Why do they think that this is too far? This is too far. People are dying in the street, but this is too far.
This is too far. Yeah.
Well, you don't know. You don't know why we had to resort to such a thing. Let me tell you. And so that's when I was like, excuse me, I just gonna, and I was like, we have tried. That's what was on my heart. I was like, we have tried so many ways, like, writing and denting and petitions and appealing to all these humanities, and we haven't been heard, Right. I had to plan a vigil and a ceremony for Regis Coach and C. Paquette. I didn't have to. I chose to do that. And to do that with her nephews and
Yeah.
her kin, and them being so confused
Yes.
about what they're told, the people who are supposed to keep them safe. How is that 4-year-old going to be when he's 16? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like all that was in my head, and so that's what I put out. And so I went to sleep.
Mhm.
I woke up and I saw that it was shared I saw a couple of shares, and I was like, interesting. A producer shared it, and then Drake's producer shared it, and then a bunch of hip hop folks saw it, and that was my first experience of it, watching people tear me apart.
Oh.
They weren't talking about what I was saying. They weren't disagreeing with what I was saying. They're just talking about what I looked like. What I looked like, and it's like, we went from Martin Luther King to this, and all these kind of statements that were in there. And I was like,
you read all of that?
I read all that, yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I am done. You know, I put my life on the line for these very people.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
They don't know what it takes. They don't understand that there are police outside my house. They don't get that. And they're not outside my house because they're just in my neighborhood. They're outside of my house because they're surveilling my house and me and my life and my family. And so I am putting all the people who are close to me at risk because of what I do. And so that's what it means to be on the direct activism team of Black Lives Matter. It means that you and your entire family are connected to this whole movement. And that is difficult. It's a difficult thing to do.
It is, but it doesn't need to be that way.
It doesn't need to be, but it is, you know. It like, we have to think about safety. I can't share my locations. I'm not one of those people who's like, I've been at. No, can't do that. I can't do that because you don't know who agrees with you and disagrees with you. And so when that went viral, I was lucky that it was, and this sounds crappy, but because of the pandemic, there was a subway shutdown. And so I didn't get on the subway. I haven't been on the subway in a year and a half, maybe 2 years, almost a year and a half.
Yeah.
And if I had, I would have had an anxiety attack because I don't know who saw it, how they feel about it.
Yeah.
On subways, I keep my back to the wall. Like, there's just a way that I live my life now. And I was already on the margins. I was already highly visible as a trans woman. It is doubled. And so, you know, Madonna shares it and then it goes, you know, all of it. I was like, this is cool, but
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then people were like, oh, can you come and do this interview? Can you talk about this? And so I just wanted to disappear. I wanted to hide. I wanted to run away. And Cyrus Marcus Blair, who is on this Toronto team with me, and is my friend and kin, was like, you have an opportunity. People are listening to you.
That's right.
You're a trans woman and people are listening to you. And I know that it's hard, but you need to ride this wave. And so then I answered the emails, and then I started turning my Instagram into, I started doing lives and started talking about my ideas, and that's how that. Originally, I wasn't going to do anything. I still have not posted that speech on my page. I probably won't.
Do you regret doing it?
No, I'm not trying to be activist famous. I wasn't. I don't have goals like that.
Okay.
So some people do, but I don't want to be. I am now, so it is what it is. I accept it, but yeah, I wanted to be known as a dancer, like I was saying before, and like just do my activism. You know, I was perfectly happy on the team when I wasn't doing any media, and I was behind the scenes, and I was helping the families because I could see the changes in their lives. I could see what the support meant to them. And that was my skill. Like I'm a people person, and so connecting with the families is sort of what I do, and so I hold a lot.
Yeah.
emotionally, which is fine, because that I can handle. It was not being sure of what this would mean for my life, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I have received so much of what I had dreamed of when I was a kid that I was like, oh, this was the plan. This was
Yes.
the plan, and I didn't realize that this is where I was going the entire time.
Right, right.
Everything is blended, and then people saw my speeches, and then we're like, "Oh, you're a dancer," and then it did the opposite. I wanted it to go the other way, and it did the opposite. And so,
Right.
yeah, I just use it. I don't regret doing the speech because I think people heard it, um, and I've been invited into spaces that trans women have never
That's
have
right.
never
That's
been
right.
invited.
Yeah.
But my job when I get into those spaces, now that I have this privilege, is to use it.
Yes.
Is to be like, oh, do you know that this person is doing this work in Montreal? There's a person in Saskatchewan doing this work who's trans. There's a Black trans woman over here doing this work too.
That's
You
right.
need to contact them. Oh, you're looking for Afro-Indigenous folks? Let me get you in touch with Malika Awari, or and just get people, share it,
Yes.
so that one, no one's looking for me for all the trans answers, because and there's a vastness of experiences that are being shared, and so
Right.
I'm using I'm using this time period of being highlighted in that really specific way.
That's perfect. That's so great. There's a question here. It says, as a two-spirit queer trans Black artist, what does this month of June mean to you? Black Music Month, Indigenous Heritage Month, and Pride Month.
Ooh, what does it mean to me? This might be disappointing. I don't know. When I think about Pride Month specifically, I used to get so excited for it. I used to be like, oh my goodness, it's Pride. Like, it's the only weekend of the year that I get to go and walk down Yonge Street in whatever I want.
Whatever you want.
And just do the thing. And so that was great until I realized there was so much pain and so much erasure of elders. There was no elder programming at Pride. There was, when the massacre at the Pulse nightclub happened, and the Pride Toronto folks read their names wrong. They pronounced their names wrong.
I know.
These visions broke for me. When I was like talking to some of my sex worker friends, and they were like, I don't feel safe with the police in their uniforms in the parade. And I was like, well, we have to do something about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uniforms in the parade. Because they're like, oh, trans women and sex workers who started this whole thing don't feel safe, then what are we doing?
Right.
So, my relationship has changed. However, Pride started as a riot, as an activist. It's activism. It's abolition. It's change.
Right.
And so it's my month to share myself in all the ways, my vulnerable ways, to my extravagant ways, to my incomplete thoughts, and all those kinds of things. Just being able to show like the full spectrum of a queer human being.
But do you think that you do that every month of the year?
I do. But there are times when I'm more intentional about certain aspects of my life. And this month feels tough, sitting with the struggles of African folks, sitting with the struggles of Indigenous folks, and the struggles of LGBTQ folks. It's like it's a lot. It's a lot. And it's overwhelming, and honestly, but I realized I'm not really doing it alone.
That's very true.
I have a team, and I love my team. I love them so much.
Yeah.
Sandy and Cyrus and
Call them out. Call them out.
And I love them all.
Yeah.
Rodney, who was in that video holding my back because I was like, time period that I have so much friendship, love, and kin love with my communities, but it does also mean that my sensitivity to all the ways that we're impacted is also heightened. So I'm going to try and do more rest for myself.
Good.
Have a little bit more fun this month.
Yes.
But also pushing all the ways that I can. And so, that's what it means to me. Activism, political uprisings,
being intentional
and
about
the healing of
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask then next, what's next for you? But rest is in there, having fun is in there. What else? What else can we look forward to?
Business for me? I'm writing a memoir, and I'm really excited about that. I don't identify as a writer.
Well, the book is already written.
Yes, I co-authored a chapter with Cyrus, actually, in the Black Lives Matter book, Until We Are Free. And so I was lucky to have his guidance in that. But this one is about me. It's the stories that I've danced, that I didn't say what was actually happening with me, but I perform them. And so I'm going back into all the stories and all the things that led me to that speech.
Okay.
So detailing. And I'm also working on an album called The Keynote. And it's wild because it wasn't because of the speech that I called it the keynote. It was because a couple of years ago, I was going into high schools, and it terrified me because my experience in high school was not so awesome.
Right.
In terms of the bullying and stuff like that. Anyway, and so I was like, what is going to allow me to give this message? Because I'm talking about the Black Lives Matter movement. This is what they want to know. But when they see me walk on stage, they're like, the giggling starts. So I sang. I started my speeches singing. And then I started doing flash mobs and getting them to dance these realities. And then I started sharing the information. And so utilizing these different parts of what I do, this information out to these folks, also keep myself safe while doing it. So the album is a collection of my thoughts about the world and activism and that kind of thing. And so I'm excited for both of those things. It's a busy time. Busy time.
But it's fulfilling.
Continuing to grow the Black Lives Matter Canada network. So we have a bunch of new chapters who have just started working, and it's really amazing. All the work that's coming across, like the decentralization of Black activism as not just a Toronto-centric thing, but going across Canada.
That's right. Wow.
A global movement as well, because we're connected to BLM in Brazil and in UK as well. Making sure that our the conversations are vast and robust, and that we are having that cross-national conversation as well.
Okay.
That's what's happening in my life, and that's
what's oh, geez. Oh, yeah, that's easy stuff. Easy stuff. So before we go, though, Ravyn, I'm wondering if there is, I don't know, a challenge that you have for people listening, people who are going to watch this again, or watch it for the first time, is there a challenge? And I think I say that because as an activist, like there's things that we can do,
Mhm.
but is there a challenge that you have for people that are watching in terms of what your ultimate goal? What do you challenge people to get up and do?
I want us to examine where we are doing daily harm
Hmm.
and repair it.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I like
Um,
that.
yeah, just I feel like 2020 was a deep reckoning for a lot of us to start paying attention to each other.
Yeah.
Um, and the African proverb from the Ashanti people, Sankofa, to go back and fetch it, to look at our histories, to look at how we got here.
Yes.
We can uproot the reasons why we're in this situation. Yeah, and so look into your own self and how you're treating your partners and your friends, and because that's really where it starts. You know what I mean? Like you can do
Right.
acting outside, but then be a jerk to your people and your friends. We all
Right.
know that. I'm not talking about that. And we have to be doing it on the inside
Yes.
first before it can change lives on the outside.
Is there a way
So,
that we're just kind of perpetuating this? Is it we have to really take a look at it, or
yeah, I mean, there are several ways. For me, um, I have people in my life that hold me accountable
Hmm.
intentionally, purposefully,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know? And, you know, I have the friends who are like, um, allow me to say everything that's on my mind. And I have the friends who are like, okay, but really? You know, like for example, I was talking about Meghan Markle and what had happened to her. And I said this comment flippantly. I meant it, but it was also flippant and it wasn't well thought out. Um, I said, how could she be surprised? The book was open.
hmm.
We'll talk about
Right,
how don't read it. That book was
right.
open. The British
Yes,
monarchy, like,
we
come
knew
on,
that.
sis.
Yeah.
But then my friend Dainty Smith pulled me aside and was like, "Well, how come Black women don't get to be naive?" And I was like, "Hold up,
Hmm.
mm, mm, oh, 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 oh." I gotta think about that. And so having people in my life like be like, "Oh, Raven, like, have you thought about this or
Yeah.
this that you're doing, or you know, criticism is part of the work, but having friends who hold me in my full humanity." So
Right.
um that's what allows me to stay centered in the principles that I'm putting out.
We all need
um
people like that.
yeah, and if you
Yeah.
don't have that, you do it for yourself. You
Yes.
know, I mean, the work is going to be your own anyway. You have to do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I started with my father. I'll just be real transparent. I started with my father. I had to forgive him in order to start forgiving myself.
Oh wow.
And I never thought that I would forgive him. And in some ways I haven't, but I really had to think about what it meant to forgive him and realize I had never done that for myself. I
Oh
was like,
wow.
oh my goodness, I don't even know what forgiveness is. We talk about it, but what is it in practice? Like, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um, and so starting with him and having those conversations of being like, you hurt me,
Yeah.
and this is how I responded, and I hurt you. Can we talk about that?
All
You
right.
know, really just like without shame or guilt or blame, just with the grace of being in a different space
Mhm.
and time. It allowed me to look at myself in a different way, to be like, okay, what is self-reflection, self-reflection, introspection,
Yeah.
um, like the work that I want to do on myself inside so that I'm not creating harm to people. You know, I experience a lot of violence. And so I could be a really violent person.
Yeah, right.
This is,
You could be. Yeah.
you know, just transfer what's been transferred to me. And I was like,
Right.
but my is not to do that. I have to
Yes.
take it in, understand it, and then turn it into something else.
But
Yeah.
that's work that you did to come to that realization. Yeah. We all got to do that work.
Definitely. A lot of spiritual counselors and guidance, a lot of meditation, yeah, a lot of music. I just yeah, I'm just paying attention to how people treat each other and how I fall into that. You know, what I laugh. I shared this video. I'll say this real quick. I shared this video with my friend Shanga because it bothered me, and I couldn't really articulate what bothered me about it. But it was this dog that was stuck in a ditch. No, this lamb that was stuck in a ditch, and the person got it out of the ditch, and it was so frightened with anxiety that it ran and landed right back in the ditch. And people were sharing it, and they're always laughing emojis underneath it. And I was like, something about this is a lot. Like there's medicine in this conversation of like, we are so triggered and traumatized and have so much anxiety that we find ourselves in the same situation. That's why I'm seeing that. And then she was like, but we're learning off of the medicine of an animal.
Yeah.
Not about the actual subject.
And
what all I hear is this animal's in distress.
Yes.
And how we react to people who are in distress, to animals who are in distress.
Right.
It's like this. I'm like, whoa, you know.
Yes.
And so when I don't understand something, I send it to a friend of mine. I'm like, okay, can we work it through?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't think we have to leave alone, and I also don't think we have to learn alone.
Yes.
And so, and to be Young, who's one of my mentors, to be Anita Africa Young, says we are all answers and questions. And so
that's good.
There's an answer that you have, and there's also questions that you have.
That's
and
right.
So we have a conversation with each other to get those answers and have those things and move forward. And so that's what I center for myself.
You got some good mentors, though. Good quotes, good things to live by. Oh, Ravyn, my goodness. Oh, wow. I mean, this is a good conversation. I'm like hanging off of your every word. You've done so much for the community. You will continue to do so much for the community. And we're definitely blessed to have you. But I do ask you to rest because we need you. Right? You are paving that way that have been paved for you. You are paving that way as well. So thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for what you do. I do watch that speech on a regular basis. I really do, right? And especially the anniversary of that. Yeah, I do. And it's powerful. And it's not even about how you look, it's what you're saying. So powerful.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot to me.
Listen, if you want to watch it, I'm going to leave it up to you to watch it. I'm going to leave it up to you to post it. But I do think, you know what, be proud of it.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
Really amazing. So thank you so much for talking with me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for everything that you do. It is so, so appreciated. And thank you everyone for watching this Uplift Black's mental health series. And thank you so much, Ravyn, for being here. We have a back-to-back. We have one next week as well. So it's a real treat for everybody. So thank you so much for being here. And yes.
I appreciate it so much. And your holding of the conversation, because we talked about a lot of things and you held it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ravyn. All right. Everyone take care. Have a good night.
Good night.
Are we still live?